911, Big 550 KTRS. Scott Sherman, ladies and gentlemen, Big 550 KTRS. He's part of the Scott Sherman experience. 9 to midnight here on the Big 550 KTRS.
How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
Rod Jetton interview was pretty interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, why can't they be like that when they're in office?
You're like the 7th person in the last 15 minutes that has said that to me.
Let me tell you something about that guy. It takes a lot of courage to be that humble. And the problem is that there are too many people that are like the way he used to be and not like the way he is now.
He laid it out. He said, here's the problem.
Why
when you're Speaker of the House, you're given everything, and you start believing everything, and you only listen to the people who laud over you, and you become an untouchable, and you think everything's for the taking.
Remember The Emperor Has No Clothes, The Emperor's New Clothes, the children's book?
Yeah.
When they sit around and tell the naked guy that he looks great?
Right.
That's what it is, man.
Right. And so now he left in disgrace in the midst of a sex scandal, in the midst of a rough consensual sex scandal that turned a little too rough with funny nicknames like green balloons and everything else. And 5 years later, he comes back, he writes a book, Success Can Kill You, one man's story of success, failure, faith, and forgiveness. And more people want to vote for him today than when he claimed to be squeaky clean back then.
That's right. We've talked about this a lot. Authentic people don't make it in politics. Phonies do.
Yeah.
And when you run to one end of the political spectrum and you gin up the base while everybody else is at a Cardinals game or watching the NBA playoffs, the nuts vote for the nuts that read them what they want to hear out of the hymn book. And then we're stuck with a bunch of nuts that then have to pretend they're nuts or are real nuts.
Yeah.
And
really
we are a country of extremists.
It was really interesting.
And that's the problem.
All right, Scott Sherman, let's get to it. This you've done some extensive work over this execution story going on here in Missouri in terms of...
Well, I read a case.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want people to think that you actually studied for the show. So the argument is that the media now wants to know, is suing the state. They want to know what's in this drug cocktail.
Where does it come from? Who makes it? Is it one of these compounding pharmacies like they had in Oklahoma where they had the problem? Who is in charge of this kind of stuff?
Why do we have a right to know? What's the big deal?
Well, there are two main issues. One, you've got this sunshine law that Missouri has had for years where the whole basis of the Missouri Constitution is that all political power is vested in and derived from the people. Mm-hmm. So they work for us. Imagine that. What a great concept.
Right.
So the Sunshine Law is a statute where you say, okay, look, if it's a public document and there aren't exemptions or exceptions to it, give it to me and give it to me quick. And over time, in the history, the Missouri Department of Corrections has given up information about the way that they conduct executions. After all, historically, they used to hang people in the public square. It was a social event.
Right.
And as they moved from hangings to gas chambers to lethal injections, they still had the public involved in it, but they were very transparent. This is sort of something that good government is supposed to be. Recently, however, they've sort of changed their tune. As recently as October of 2013, where, if you remember, that was that guy Joseph Paul Franklin.
Right.
All of a sudden, the Missouri Department of Corrections didn't want to tell everybody what was in the cocktail.
Well, they had a hard time getting the drugs because the drug manufacturers didn't want their drugs to be used to execute people.
In particular, propofol. So they were looking outside of Missouri, presumably to some of these compounding pharmacies, these places that sort of mix and match and aren't really regulated. And Oklahoma just had a problem where they went to kill a guy and they didn't get his vein, and oh, by the way, he died of a heart attack. Now, I don't have any sympathy for the people who committed these crimes in the sense of whether or not they get the death penalty. This is not the death penalty is unconstitutional argument. This is the Sunshine Law argument. If you're going to kill them in our name, show us the documents and tell us.
Let me ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
The executioner has a hood on. If there might be some backlash to the person whose job it is to pull the switch, there might be some backlash for the company that gives the drugs to execute the man. Shouldn't we protect those people from the crazies out there who are going to go to the extreme?
Yes, with respect to the way that the Black Hood law was passed. This is something that goes back decades. And that's 546.720 for all of you that
Boy,
are
you're
looking
good.
it up. Yeah, read the statute. It says in the Black Hood Law that it is to protect the people that are part of the execution team that provide direct support for the administration of the lethal gas, such as medical personnel. So the people that actually pull the switch, the people that actually inject it, yeah, you want to protect them and give them the Black Hood. But the Department of Corrections, on its own, in violation of Missouri law, decided that everybody was part of the Black Hood Law. We're going to protect everybody. The UPS guy that delivers it there, the person that sends the money over there, the people that have the compounding pharmacy, anybody who looked at the stuff, everybody's a part of their execution
So the Department
team.
of Corrections just automatically decided this is what they were going to do.
Yeah, and they did it in October of 2013.
And so this is what the argument is.
That's one of them. And they also say, look, part of this is the media sent in these requests, AP and the Post-Dispatch and these other media outlets, and they said, we'll get to it in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, you're supposed to do it in 3 business days. They're not worried about complying with the Sunshine Law request and following that to the letter of the law. However, when Alan Nicholson still had his appeal pending in the Eighth Circuit, they looked at their watch and said, well, Justice Alito said it's time to kill him. Pull the switch.
They did execute somebody before the final appeal was finished.
Yeah, so they abide by the letter of the law. When they're killing people, they don't abide by the letter of the statute when you want the documents.
Tony Messenger has said on this show, maybe even sitting in that very seat, Scott Sherman, that there are people in the state of Missouri who put cash in a brown bag and drive to Oklahoma to get the drugs needed and then drive back to get the drugs so that they can execute here in Missouri.
This lawsuit calls them drug mules. They just flat out call them drug mules. And if that's the evidence that they have, I'm not going to question the Post-Dispatch's evidence on that. However, what the Department of Corrections has done here is administratively, by fiat, decided, well, they're part of the execution team. And whoever drives with them is part of the execution team. And the pharmacist in Oklahoma is part of the execution team. Everyone's part of the execution team when the Black Hood Law is specifically designed to protect those people that directly administer the fatal dose of whatever it is that kills this person.
Okay, so the lawsuit was filed.
Yeah.
How long ago? Yesterday. How long? What's the next step here? Is the judge going to put an injunction on it? What's going to go on?
They didn't ask for one, so they're looking for a hearing on this to see if they have to turn over these documents. It's basically
sounds to me like they're going to have to.
Me too. They not only have this statutory argument, but they also have a constitutional argument, and that's really the basis of what's more interesting than looking in and seeing if there are exceptions to the Sunshine Law, which puts a lot of people to sleep. The basis of this is what I read at the beginning, that they work for us, that open government, that having transparent government is not just good government, it's required government. The First Amendment is part of not just free speech, but also that the government has to open itself up to the people that pay its bills and run the show.
We should say that the lawsuit says not it shouldn't be, we don't want it. All the lawsuit is saying is you must disclose which drugs you're using to execute the guilty.
That's right. That's
the only thing the media wants out of this.
Very clear. This is not an Eighth Amendment cruel and unusual punishment. Death penalty is bad.
These newspapers, these news outlets, the only thing they want to do is report what the drug is.
Show us what's in this drug cocktail, who makes it, how it's made. Is the place that makes it, are they competent? Are they qualified? Are they certified?
What about like the company that makes some of the drugs that doesn't? I'm a company, a lot of them are in Europe, that say, no, we don't want to use our drugs for your execution. Can they come and say, hey, we want to know what drugs you're using. We want to make sure you're not using our drug?
I suppose they could. All of this is supposed to be open. What they're doing in the name of the people of the state of Missouri is executing someone.
Right.
you presume, based on the fact that they've had a jury trial and constitutional rights and appeals and all that, that they deserve it.
Right.
And until it's unconstitutional, it's constitutional. But transparency and constitutionality are two completely different subjects. You can be for the death penalty, as I am in certain circumstances, and say, not only do we want 8 people or however many people to sit in that room, give one of them a camera.
Oh,
And
now you're singing my song.
I want to see. Singing the same song, brother. And singing this one. I'm John.
I'm singing. No.
Look, you're
out of key, pal.
Look, you might be Frank Sinatra, but I'm Johnny Mercer. I wrote this song. Put the camera in somebody's hand or put it on a wall
right.
and put it on the internet.
Exactly
if
right.
The people of the state of Missouri watch that and say, okay.
I don't care if nobody watches it. I don't care if one person watches it.
Make it available.
If I'm allowed, if my rights are allowed to know that Jay Nixon sent an email to his secretary saying, what time is lunch today? If I have a right to know what he writes in an email on a government computer, then I certainly have the right to watch them execute somebody in my name.
Absolutely so.
And whether you're for it, whether you're against it, I don't care. The point is, if you're doing it in my name, don't tell me, no, this is so egregious, you don't want to see this, trust us. I don't trust you.
That's right.
And I never will trust you.
That's right.
And you can tell me how great you are, and all. I don't trust you. I want to be able to see it for myself.
If you can go into most restaurants now that are pretty high-end restaurants, whether you're a vegetarian or a carnivore, and see the open kitchen, then whether you're pro-death penalty or against the death penalty, you should have an ability to have the execution open and see it.
Right. And
what are they afraid of?
Right. Those people are like, oh, no, we shouldn't do that. Well, then don't look.
Don't watch.
Don't watch.
This is the argument about free speech. You don't have to buy what they're selling in the court of public opinion. Just make it available for the rest of us that do. And don't lecture me about how I'm barbaric or cruel or that I'm out of line or that they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing in Oklahoma. There's a 6-month moratorium now because their execution doubleheader didn't go so well because they couldn't kill Clayton Lockett right, and he had to die of a heart attack. Now, I don't know that he didn't deserve to do that for what he did, but when the state takes that onto themselves, they should at least be competent enough to kill somebody properly.
Well, I don't care if you do torture him or you don't torture him. Again, my point is it should be open for whoever. Maybe one person wants to watch it. Maybe nobody wants to watch it.
That's right.
The point is, though, you know what? People are like, well, why do you have to have a no-day waiting period for guns? Why can't you wait 3 days? Well, you know what? People shouldn't have to wait 3 days. Well, what's the big deal? Well, why should I? I'm a law-abiding citizen. Let me buy a gun in a day. Okay, great. Why deny me the right? It's not hurting you. It's not hurting anybody else. Maybe the family wants to see it. Maybe the family doesn't want to see it. You already have a person in there anyway representing the media to tell me, you know what? Show me.
Yep. And you know what should be the deciding factor? The United States Constitution. Not some bureaucrat in Jeff City that writes a letter to a member of the media that says this. We received your request on May 2nd, 2014. It'll take approximately 3 weeks to respond to your request. In direct violation of the Missouri Sunshine Act.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks a lot, bureaucrats.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Scott Sherman. This is just some of the scintillating conversation you hear 9 to midnight in the Big 550 KTRS. We'll come back, talk more. ARCA Midwest.